do want to let you know there are plenty of seats up front. It's actually kind of lonely up here speaking with everyone way in the back. So I wanted to welcome everybody to our second annual MATS UTC meeting. And again, for those of you who haven't been involved in the UTC for a long time, MATS is the Mid-Atlantic Transportation Sustainability University Transportation Center. Thank you very much for being here. I know many of you traveled quite a ways to be here with us. I know it's the summertime, and those of us in academia are supposed to be just relaxing, doing nothing, and I fully appreciate the fact that you're here and engaged. And I also want to thank everyone for all of your efforts to make MATS UTC a big success. We've been underway for 2 years now, and I'm really excited about the impact we've had in educating students, in improving practice in our region, and just in general making transportation better in the Mid-Atlantic region and the nation. And that's because of all your hard work, and I want to thank you very much for that. I also wanted to take one moment and thank our advisory board. I know many of you might not be aware of the fact that we have a really top-notch involved advisory board who is helping to make sure that the work that we do is the right work for the region. So I hate to call you out, but if you're on the advisory board, maybe if you all would introduce yourself just quickly, because again, a big goal of this meeting is the networking. So if you haven't already talked to these folks, I would really encourage you to talk to them at breaks, at the social event tonight or tomorrow. So Jose, maybe you can get us started, and if the advisory board members would introduce themselves, please. Oh yeah. Yes, that's true. And again, we owe all of these folks a big thank you, because they are contributing their time and expertise to really help us to develop a program that has the most impact in our region. So I wanted to thank you all very much. Just a kind of a quick overview of the day. Hopefully you'll see the way we put the meeting together is what we're really about here is making connections with other researchers, other faculty, staff, students at all of our partner universities, making connections with our advisory board, sharing the results of our research, both completed and underway, and also looking at what we're going to do in the future. That's a big part of the program. And if you look, this afternoon, our agenda is really all about the future. We at a lot of conferences, you invite old people like myself who don't get to do real research anymore. We're just evil administrators. But and we talk about stuff we did 20 years ago, and everyone tries not to follow. We thought we'd do something different, and we've invited new early career individuals in our field from our partner universities to talk about the work that they're doing, the cutting edge, exciting work that they're doing, and to learn what they are doing, and also to kind of generate ideas from all of us. So that's the whole idea of this afternoon, is to hear the latest and greatest of what we're doing here in our region. So we're going to hear from 3 speakers, and then we'll take a break. Then we'll hear from 3 more, and then after that, we will have dinner. That's always important. Dinner will be on your own. Now, I did want to say we do have sign-ups for restaurants that are on the corner area. For those of you who have already been to the hotel, the corner is the set of restaurants and businesses adjacent to the hotel. So we do have a number of suggestions, and what we're asking you to do is at break, if you'd like to, sign up for one of those, and then we can make reservations for you. You're certainly welcome to do anything else you like as well. So that please take advantage of that at break. And then tonight at 7:30, we're going to have a dessert and wine reception in what's called the Garden Room, which is part of the original University of Virginia that was designed by Thomas Jefferson. Part of the thing in my contract here at UVA is I have to mention Thomas Jefferson at least once in every public speaking engagement, so now I've done it. But in all seriousness, it's a really cool area. It's historical, it's beautiful, so please join us for some time just to talk to each other. And then following that at 9, from 9 to 10:15, that's kind of roughish. It'll be in that area. We will have tours of the lawn area, the original part of the university, and that should be really, really interesting as well. So I encourage you to take advantage of those. And then tomorrow we will come back here and basically focus on the future. And we will have breakout sessions talking about the things that we're going to do over the next 2 years of MATS UTC. So that's kind of a quick overview of the agenda. So please be actively involved. This is not the kind of meeting where you sit back and just absorb. Try to be part of as much as you can. All right. So to dive in here, I've been asked to give a State of the Center address, so I feel kind of, I don't know, presidential or whatever. Let me just, and I will keep this to the point and not too long, but just to tell you kind of where we are as a center and the activities we're involved with. So this is our mission, and we really try very hard to follow this mission. We're really all about research, education, workforce development, and technology transfer, focus on sustainability in the provision of transportation services. So as one of the things I'm sure you noticed in the poster, sustainability is a very broad topic, and I think that's one of the strengths of our center. We're able to address many, many areas in transportation. But this is what we're about, and please do keep this in mind, and we do that in our program. As far as kind of where we stand, we are really exactly at the halfway point in the life of the center. We started 2 years ago in August. The funding will run until essentially 2 years from now in 2018. We've already allocated much of the base funds, but there's quite a bit of base funds. And I say base funds, that's the money that goes to each university to run their component of the program. As many of you know, and many of you are involved with, we do have a competitive research program where we ask for collaborative proposals from institutions. We have about $1.8 million left to spend on that. I think that's not right, is it? Oh, okay, that's okay. So we have $1 million left. Excuse me. So there will be another competition this fall. So keep your eyes out. We will be announcing this, but there will be another competition this fall, and that will be driven in many ways based on what we talk about and generate at this meeting. So we're halfway there. We've got a lot to do. As many of you know, this consortium did submit a proposal for the next round of university transportation centers. We expect to hear about that in September. So ideally, this September 2018 will not be the end date. That will be going years and years past that. But again, I think it is important not to just look at the future of that possible center, but let's make sure we deliver this center to the best of our ability. So that's what we're really all about here over the next couple of years. So research. You see all the numbers here. In just 2 years, we've done quite a lot, and that is to your credit. 36 projects are underway or done. You see 14 final reports. a large number of investigators, faculty, and staff, as well as over 40 students. The vast majority of these projects are collaborative. They aren't just a single campus projects. And again, and I don't need to read all these things to you, but basically, I think the research program is very healthy, and I think you saw from the poster session, it really is a variety of efforts underway. Education-wise, one of the things that we're very proud of is that we have developed and we're getting ready to deliver for the second time an online or a distance learning semester-long graduate course on sustainability and transportation. This is not that common around the country, which is, I think, and so basically, as you see here, we have instructors from all of our partner universities who work together to deliver this. We are expanding the number of modules this year from up to 11 modules. And you see here at the bottom table are the topics that we're covering in that course. And last fall we had 24 students amongst all of our campuses take it. We'll see what we have this year. We're still in the registration phase, obviously. But again, I think this is a great way that as a team we have combined our expertise to offer a course that probably not any of us could offer by ourselves to our students. And therefore we're providing our students with a better background as they go into industry. So, and a lot of the people you see in the instructor side have put much work into this and have done a fantastic job. Another thing we're very proud of is from education is our undergraduate summer research program. We actually just finished this up last week for the summer of 2016. We had 11 students literally from all over the country who were here and at 3 other campuses, also at Delaware, Morgan State, and ODU, right? And did some really outstanding work. I really enjoyed going to their final presentations last week. And if you're interested, you can see their reports, presentations on our website. But again, this is, I think, an important thing that we're doing to help expose students to the career opportunities in transportation, in many cases to get students interested in research in transportation. I can say, for example, from our class of 2015, I know of at least one of those students will be going to grad school starting this fall based on their experience in the internship program. So this has been a really positive component of our program. Other things in education we've done, we do webinars on careers in transportation. That's something we plan to expand this year, where we essentially have practicing professionals in our field come in and talk to our students. Here's what I do. Here's how I got there. Here's what I would recommend to you to prepare for a career in this field. So again, trying to help students learn outside of the classroom, not just, here's how you do these things, but here's what you can do in the future. We're also very involved in K through 12 outreach. We've developed some really hands-on, engaging modules on structures and materials. We are involved in participating in career fairs in different states in the consortium. We are involved in summer and teacher transportation institutes. That's a program that's really led by Morgan State. So we really are trying to hit all levels of education, from elementary all the way through the PhD side. And beyond that, we're also looking very hard at trying to make sure that we help practicing professionals continue to improve their skills and knowledge. So we are really do all we can to make sure that things that we do on one campus or another are available throughout the region through the internet. We also have instituted a research webinar series, and the idea of this is to help people in the field understand and learn from the results of our research. The user friendliness of a research report is somewhat limited. So trying to find a way to get the results out of our labs into the field. So you see here, these are some of the webinars that have already been delivered. And again, as I said earlier, we do have a very extensive website. Pretty much everything I talk about, if it was done live, we've recorded it. It's available on our website still for people to have access to it at any time. And again, more on the webinar series. Technology transfer is another important component of our program. And again, like I said a moment ago, it's about trying to take what we learned in our laboratories and get it out to the field into practice. I know this is really important, particularly to our advisory board. This is something that we really need to do to realize the most out of the investment in the MATS UTC. So, we do things like the webinars, obviously making sure that our reports, papers are readily accessible over the web, and that we get the word out that they're there through our communications plan, which I'll talk about in a minute. We make sure that the data that we use for our projects are available through the MATS UTC Dataverse so that other researchers can take advantage of that and hopefully extend the work that we've done. Things like this, we invite other folks from the community to be here. I know, for example, today we had many people from VDOT's research division are here, VTRC, which is fantastic. So again, doing all we can to get to transfer the technology. But with that being said, I think that is probably one of the areas that we need to put even more effort on in the center and trying to find champions to help us to make this happen. We are doing quite a bit of work to try to make sure that what we do gets beyond our offices and laboratories. And again, that's a real challenge. We do meetings like this. We have newsletters. We have Facebook, Twitter, all that kind of good stuff. We have an internal newsletter which we instituted this year based on the feedback from last year's annual meeting. One of the things that came across last year in our annual meeting in our focus groups or in our breakout sessions was, gee, it's really hard for me as a researcher in the center to know what the heck's going on because there's all these projects. And so what we're doing now is just sending out pretty simple internal newsletters to make sure that if I'm at the University of Delaware, I know what projects are getting started at Virginia Tech or what have you. So we're trying to help expose more what we're doing to all involved. So again, this is what we're trying to do in terms of outreach and communications. So this is our fancy graphic to show how many people are seeing all this stuff. I'm not so sure the 127 Twitter followers would impress a lot of social media people, but we're trying. But again, I think, I know. I have a teenage daughter, so I'm too familiar with this kind of stuff sometimes. But anyway, so you see, but a lot of effort to try to get this word out, and the staff here within the center are doing a fantastic job of that. Again, we've talked about these things: the career fairs, the annual meeting, which you're at today. And I do want to kind of conclude here with the point that what we do here makes a difference, and this is why I'm asking you to really roll up your sleeves and be involved. These are things that happened this year, and the changes in how we've run MATS UTC this year that are a direct result of what we heard from you all last year in our breakout sessions. So again, we've instituted this monthly internal newsletter. The last round of competitive collaborative projects, we made it more clear what the scoring criteria are so that people who are proposing know exactly what they're trying to, basically seeing what the rules are so they can write the most competitive proposals. We've also more involved the matching components of these projects, the agencies or companies who are matching the projects, to make sure that's really valued highly in our evaluation method. We're working harder to emphasize the diversity of our center, and I think that's one of the real strengths of this center. Diversity in many, many ways, in terms of the people who are involved, in terms of the disciplines, in terms of the universities, and that's one of the strengths of our center. It's important we get that word out as well. We've expanded our summer undergraduate internship program, and that again is based on what we heard from you all last year, and we've also tried to diversify how we're doing technology transfer. So again, the point I'm trying to get across here is this is not what we say, what we do here will impact how we move forward. So with that being said, again, I thank you for being here. I thank you in advance for all the hard work you're going to do for the next day. And I guess, how are we on time? If there are any questions, I'm happy to answer them, and if not, we can move into our presentation. Okay. So, all right. So with that being said, let's move into the emerging research areas presentations. And again, we're going to hear 3 presentations now. I'm going to ask that we hold questions for each individual presentation until after all 3 are done, and then we'll have more of a discussion question period for that group. So that's the kind of the format we'll follow, and then after that we'll take a break. So our first presenter is Rajesh Paleti, and he is at Old Dominion University, and we'll give him a moment to make his way down. And you got this presentation up, Emily? Good. Okay. Great.
Good afternoon, all. I am Rajesh Paleti. I'm an assistant professor in civil and environmental engineering at Old Dominion University. I'm going to talk about some of the research that I have been doing the past couple of years and where I am trying to focus going forward. The topic of my presentation is new econometric models for travel behavior analysis. So I work in the transportation planning and travel behavior area. So a lot of data analysis and behavioral modeling. So when we hear the word travel behavior, these are the type of questions that come to our mind. So how do mode and route choices change in response to tolling? Or what is the market share of electric vehicles going to be in the future? What is the expected penetration rate of connected and autonomous vehicles? What is the impact of telecommunication technologies on activity travel patterns of people? So these are all the kinds of questions where we are trying to understand what kind of choices people are going to make into the future. So it's travel behavior that we are trying to understand. And the typical analysis framework that most researchers adopt to understand this is they start with a behavioral theory. So how do people make decisions? So for example, utility maximization theory is one such theory where you assume that people make rational choices. They pick if you have a bunch of options to choose from, the people will pick an alternative which gives him or her the highest utility. So that's just one such theory. There are several such theories out there. So you start with a behavioral theory, then you try to develop a statistical model that is consistent with your behavioral theory. So you can build a complicated model which tells very little about behavior, which is just kind of a data mining approach where you try to plug in a lot of models and only thing you're interested in is in the statistical prediction ability, but very little behavioral basis. But here in behavior analysis, you're trying to build models which are consistent with behavioral theories. And then to develop the parameters or estimate the parameters in the model, you need to collect data. So there is a survey data collection, things like census data or national household travel survey data. So these are the data which record travel responses in and then try to correlate them with a bunch of predictors. So you need that survey data. And the next step is to estimate the model parameters using the survey data. So that is statistical model estimation. And finally, once you have the model developed, you try to do some sensitivity analysis. What is the response to tolling? What is the response to travel times? And come up with future forecasts. So that's the typical framework. So my research area is to develop improved statistical models in travel behavior analysis. And these models obviously must be consistent with a certain well-established behavioral theories. And these models must be used in practice. So they must not be too complicated, which will make them difficult to apply in practice. So that's the key. If I have to summarize my research, that's what I do. So within this topic, I'm going to focus on 3 case studies, if I may say, where I'm trying to improve the current state of research. So one of the problems or one of the things that researchers deal with when they are trying to predict behavior is the choice set variation. So what do I mean by that? If we consider this example where people have to make a choice between three types of vehicles: gasoline fueled vehicles, or hybrid vehicles, or electrical vehicles. So let's say these are the three options available to a person or everyone. So there is nothing beyond these three options. So this is known as a universal choice set. Okay. Now there is a standard model known as a multinomial logic model. Most of you are familiar with it. So according to the model, if you assume the utility maximization theory, then the model will give us the probabilities of choosing a gasoline vehicle, a hybrid vehicle, and electric vehicle. So it's a simple standard model. Okay, but the problem is not all people in a given city will consider all the three alternatives when they make a choice about what vehicle to purchase. So it is possible that some people do not even consider an electric vehicle when they make a decision to purchase. So it does not even enter the choice set. For these people, the probabilities are very similar expressions, but the probability of electric vehicle is 0. For these people, electric vehicles, they do not even consider them when they make a decision. Okay, so if you start to list all possible choice sets, so you have people who consider all the three alternatives: gasoline, hybrid vehicles, and electric vehicles. That's the universal choice set. Or you have people considering only gas and hybrid, or gas and electric vehicle, and so on. So if you look at all possible combinations of choice sets, you see that if you have k alternatives, the total number of possible choice sets in the universe is 2 power k minus 1. And you can easily see if k goes to huge values like 100, the number of combinations that you need to evaluate is 2 power 100 minus 1, which becomes very infeasible quite soon, right? So the typical model that people have used to model these varying choice sets across decision makers is known as a Mansky model, where basically in the first stage, the decision maker is assumed to pick a consideration choice set, and in the second stage, make a decision conditional on the choice set. But the analyst does not really observe what the choice set is. So the actual probability of choosing an alternative is a weighted summation across all possible choice sets. As you can see, as k increases, the combinations explode, and this model is not feasible to estimate. So what we try to come up with is something known as an implicit choice model, where you still retain the simple functional form of the probability, but you just tweak the utility expressions. So instead of V in the first expression, the utility of gasoline vehicles is V gas. What you do is you tweak and add a penalty term to the utility of gasoline alternative. So if the probability of choosing or considering a gasoline fueled vehicle is very low, then the utility is penalized. And you can try to approximate your Mansky model, which is the true behavioral model with varying choice sets, by tweaking the utility. So this is the idea behind implicit choice models. And there are some researchers who developed these implicit choice models in the past. So, but what has been found is that these models do not replicate the Mansky model reasonably closely. So there is a lot of difference between a Mansky model and these implicit choice set models. So what we try to do is come up with some heuristic methods with higher order approximations which can closely replicate Mansky model, but there is no explosion of choice sets. The convergence or the model runtime is still within a very reasonable limit. For instance, here you can see we estimated both the Mansky model as well as our higher order heuristics, and saw that as the order of approximation increases, the bias in parameters drops significantly, and also the mean convergence time, it does not increase beyond 10 seconds even with 9 alternatives. So what are the benefits of the new models? The new heuristic models that we developed, they can closely replicate the Mansky model, and they're very easy to estimate even in choice context with large choice sets. So what do we, so for instance, currently we are trying to extend this method for location choice analysis. In transportation, all location choices analysis are done at a traffic analysis zone. So for example, in Nashville, Tennessee, where we are trying to apply this model, there are 2,500 zonal alternatives. Now, if you consider all possible combinations of subsets, it's 2 power 2000 minus 1, which is almost infeasible to do a Mansky model. So what we are trying to do is extend some of our methods for location choice analysis. The second application or the second case study where is development of something known as a generalized count models. Most of you are familiar with count models, right? So count models, count data is very common. The definition is it's a non-negative data, it's a discrete data, and it's ordinal. So you can say a count of 4 is greater than a count of 3. You can order the alternatives in a certain way. And there might not even be a predefined upper limit. So for example, the number of crashes that occur in Virginia, you don't know. The higher upper limit can be, it's not predefined, it can be any number. So it's very common, as I mentioned, in transportation and land use data. So for example, the monthly telecommuting frequency can anywhere between 0 and 31 days. The yearly crash frequency, again, there is no bounds. Or the number of new businesses that come up in a county, or the number of businesses that die in a year. All these are count data, right? And so this is a typical distribution of how a count data looks like. They're usually skewed to the right, with an overrepresentation of zeros to the left. That's the typical characteristics of count data. So the standard models that are available in the literature to deal with count data are something known as a Poisson model and negative binomial model. Again, those of you who deal with this data are familiar with this. But one of the problems with these models is that these are viewed purely as statistical models that are not consistent with the behavioral theory. So you can't go back and link them to, for example, say a utility maximization theory. So what we try to do is, we try to recast these standard count models as special cases of an MNL model, which is consistent with the utility maximization theory. So for example, you can see that a Poisson model can be written as an MNL model with infinite alternatives in the choice set, starting at 0, and where the utility is parameterized in a specific functional form, okay? And moreover, you need not stop at an MNL model. MNL model is only a starting point. You can have all kinds of generalized extreme value models, like the ordered GEV models, and improve the model even better. So in fact, not just a Poisson model, even all standard count models that are there in the literature, you can recast them and write them as a special case of MNL model, okay? What the benefit is of these models, they offer much better flexibility than standard count models. We are able to link these statistical models back to a utility behavioral theory, and we are trying to extend these methods and apply to 2 UTC projects that we are current. The one is a bike sharing project that is starting, where we are trying to predict the demand for bike sharing facilities in real time, which is again the demand, the number of departures at each station. It's a count outcome. And again, we use these models also recently for developing crash frequency models for the Hampton Roads region and other UTC project that we finished recently. The last case study that I wanted to talk about is errors in survey data. Like I mentioned, survey data forms a key component of all travel behavior analysis, but survey data, as we all know, is not accurate. There are either unintentionally or intentionally the respondents might provide wrong data, right? And if you don't account for these errors in the survey data, intrinsic errors, then all your model parameters are most likely going to be biased and can then lead to wrong policy implications, right? So there is a way to correct for this misclassification error. For instance, let's go back to the example of choosing between a gasoline vehicle and an electric vehicle. It is possible that the person in reality chose a gasoline vehicle, but in the survey response, they responded it to be an electric vehicle. Similarly, the person actually chose an electric vehicle, but in the survey response, wrongly is coded as a gasoline vehicle. So these are false responses or misclassifications. And you should account for these possible biases and errors in your survey data when you develop models. So for example, this is a matrix of misclassification. So the diagonal elements in this matrix show the probability of correct classification. So there is no error. But the non-diagonal elements show misclassification, right? And there is a method to retrieve the correct parameters of your models if there are certain conditions met. What are those conditions? The probability of correct classification in the data must be greater than the probability of misclassification. What do I mean by that? For instance, if the actual response that you see in the observed data is electric vehicles, then at least 50% of those responses must be correct responses. Okay? If at least that condition is met, then there is hope of retrieving the correct parameters without any bias. Otherwise, it is even possible that some of your parameter estimates will have an opposite sign in the model. Say you are estimating a coefficients of a time or a cost variable, and it is possible that if the misclassification is quite high, you get a positive coefficient. Even the parameter signs can flip. So for example, if you consider this extreme case, out of 100 responses, 51 responses are correctly classified and 49 responses are incorrectly classified. If these numbers flip, then you cannot retrieve the parameters. Okay, we tried to apply the model for auto ownership data, which is a very important variable that travel behavior people use. For how many vehicles do households own is a very important variable which is used in almost all downstream models of travel behavior. So what we found was that, so there are 5 alternatives. A household can own 0 vehicles, 1, 2, 3 or 4 or more vehicles. There are 5 alternatives. And we estimated this misclassification rate using a household travel survey for the state of California, and we found that there are very high misclassification rates, especially if you look at the extreme alternatives. A household which responds that they own, in fact, 0 cars, out of 100 responses, 25 of those responses are actually wrong. So they actually own 1 car, but they respond that they only 0 cars. And if you go to the other extreme, 4 or more cars, 60% of the responses are correct classifications, and they tend to overestimate their car ownership. They actually own only 30% of the people only own 3 cars, and 8% only own 2 cars, but they actually respond they own 4 or more cars. So this is significant misclassification, and this has implications for all future policy analysis. So again, the benefits are we can obtain better model parameter estimates that are not biased. Okay, so we get better forecasts and better predictive analysis capability. And it's also a very useful check for survey data quality. In a lot of cases, researchers, they collect their own data to understand behavior under uncertain conditions or when the future conditions are not known. So it's a very good check on your survey data quality to estimate this misclassification. If the misclassification rate is very high, probably you should go back and get a better sample. So it serves as a good check on the survey data quality. So in summary, the current market conditions in transportation and land use are very dynamic. You have alternate fuels, connected vehicles, autonomous vehicles, ICT and rising sea levels, evacuation, all kinds of problems where people are making decisions under very dynamic market conditions. So you need better models to understand and predict behavior. And these models must be representative of the real world behavior. So you need better behavioral theories, and the model should account for errors in the data, and they should have reasonable computational complexity because you need to apply them in real world in real time, right? And I tried to demonstrate 3 research areas and how I'm planning to extend them in the future. One is the choice set variation, where the choice varies. The second is count models, which are applicable to disciplines even beyond transportation. People use count models to predict the number of patents a new technological company is likely to come up with. So it has wide applications all around. And last, misclassification errors, which is again all the errors in data that we have to deal with. So that's a summary of my research and where I'm heading. These are some of the related papers. If you have any questions or
Thank you, Rajesh. And again, we're going to hold questions until the discussion session after our next 2 speakers. So our next speaker will be Hao Chen. Hao is at the Virginia Tech Transportation Institute. So let me turn it over to Hao. Come on down, please. Try to make sure you're set up here too. So.
Name's Hao Chen. I'm a research associate working at the Virginia Tech Transportation Institute. So today I'm going to talk about the energy efficient solutions for arterial traffic and transit operation. So before we talk about the future research directions and the new ideas, it's very important to present what we have done recently. We actually developed 2 systems. First one is called Eco-Cooperative Adaptive Cruise Control, or Eco-CACC, which is used for arterial traffic. And the second is called Dynamic Dispatching Decision Support System, or 3DSS, because there are 3Ds in the word. And this is used for transit operation. So I will first talk about the Eco-CACC. In this system, the key algorithm is called Eco-Speed Control, or ESC, which aims to provide individual vehicle the most fuel-efficient way to drive and using the connected vehicle environment information. And currently, for the existing research, there are several problems. Firstly, they usually try to solve the indirect solution. For example, to minimize the acceleration or deceleration levels of the vehicle and use that to save the gas. And most of the studies use the simulation versus the field test. And most of the studies don't include the automated vehicle or automated control. So the contributions of our eco-CACC system, firstly, we have the object function directly using the fuel consumption, and we incorporated the vehicle dynamics model, fuel consumption model, and we developed the system to implement into the connected and automated vehicle, and we conducted field tests to validate the performance. So for the methodology, generally we divided the scenario into two cases, case 1 and 2, depending on if the when vehicle approaches the signalized intersection, does the vehicle need to decelerate or not? So in the case 1, vehicle doesn't need to decelerate. It can either keep in a constant speed or accelerate a little bit to a higher speed than passing the intersection. In case 2, the vehicle has to slow down. So this is the focus in this system because it's more difficult to get the solution. So we modeled the whole problem into a optimization problem. We have the object function of the fuel consumption, the summation of the fuel consumption from the upstream to downstream of the vehicle, and we listed those constraints. I'm not going to talk about the details for the mathematical equations, but generally we have two unknown variables. First one is the deceleration level, and so that's the defined how the vehicle will decelerate into a slower speed to cruise, and then after passing the intersection, it will the second unknown variable is the throttle level. So we use the dynamic programming to search the solution space and to see all the possibilities of the combination of the deceleration level and the throttle level to find the optimal solution. And then we implemented the ESC algorithm into the field test. We actually developed this eco-CACC system. It's an adaptive cruise control system. We considered all the field environment, including the driver perception reaction delay, system latency in the communication or in the electric devices inside of the vehicle, and as well as the data smoothing. And we tested the eco-CACC system on the Virginia Smart Road Connected Vehicle test bed. And in this test bed, we actually have only one signalized intersection, which is on the middle of the map, and where it's a loop. So in this loop, we have two directions to approach the intersection, and we have considering of the road grade is positive and negative 3% of the grades, which is a huge impact for the driving behavior. So we investigated two directions of the driving, and for the range to engage the eco-CACC system, we defined 250 meters upstream of the stop bar and 180 meters downstream of the stop bar. So the total range is 430 meters. And we define one trip as the vehicle drives through this 430 meters. We conducted field test with 32 participants, half male, half female, and each participant has completed 64 trips. And we consider different combination of signal timing, red timing, from 10 to 25 seconds. And there are two directions, uphill, downhill. We compared 4 scenarios. Scenario 1 is the base case, which is the uninformed drive. And scenario 2, we give the audio information to the driver. What is the red time of the remaining red time of the signal? And in scenario 3 is the eco-CACC manual mode. We also use the audio information to suggest the driver what speed they should follow. And we provide this audio every 2 seconds. In the scenario 4 is the automated driving mode. So it's the automatic vehicle, automatic controls of the gas and the brake levels. The driver just controls the steering wheel. This is the test result. On the left is the comparison of fuel consumption for the for 4 scenarios, and we use the scenario 1 as the base case. So scenario 2 saves averagely 18% of the gas, and scenario 3 saves almost 28%. And scenario 4 is the best, saves around 38% of the gas. And we got the same trend, saving the travel time. The scenario 4 saves has the biggest saving of the 9.3% of the travel time. So so this demonstrates that comparing to the uninformed drive, the base case, the automated eco-CACC actually reduces the savings up to 38% fuel saving and 9.3% of travel time saving. So for the future research, we are improving the ERC algorithm, considering there's a type with a queue impact, because there are queues on the signalized intersection, and we are considering to develop the system to optimize the multiple intersections control. And we are working with Morgan State to test the algorithm into the simulator. And we also we are working on testing the eco-CACC systems for electric vehicles and buses. Then the second system, 3DSS. I think the image is not shown here. So in this system, it tries to help the bus, the transit company to minimize their fuel consumption, but at the same time to maintain their service level into a certain range. We worked with Blacksburg Transit for this work, and they don't want the average wait time for each passenger to be higher than 5 seconds. So that's our threshold. So we try to maintain the level of service, but at the same time we help them to reduce the savings of the gas. The fonts are very hard to see. So basically we use the information of predicting how many passengers are going to wait on the bus stop. We use the historic data to conduct the prediction, and we use the bus schedule data and like how many buses are available for today's schedule, and how many trippers are the buses can be added into the system, so they are waiting there if needed. Basically, we use those information to conduct the real-time computation to calculate the level of service, and we provide 4 different kinds of suggestions. First one is adding the bus. Second one is replace a large bus by a smaller bus. Third one is remove a bus. Fourth one is replace a large bus by a small bus. So we provide suggestions to the transit operator. If they decided to accept the decision, it will make change into the bus schedule in real time. We conducted a simulation test because for real field tests is very hard. It involves a lot of political issues because they don't want the passengers just suddenly see the bus schedule changed. So firstly, we conducted the simulated test. We tested in a bus route called Eastwood A, which is a very important bus route in VT because it connects the biggest community to the campus. And in the test, we actually used all the field data they collected during October 2014, including the bus schedule, ridership data, weather information, the route information, everything. And we divided the test into sunny day and rainy days because the behavior, the performance in sunny days and rainy days would be very different. For example, sunny days would be generally less people ride the bus because they can just walk or they bike to the campus. And in this case, the 3DSS is supposed to recommend reducing the bus or replace the large bus by a smaller tripper in order to reduce the fuel consumption but maintain the service level. In rainy days, it's the opposite because more people may take the bus because it's very hard to walk or bike. And we conducted this sample result for different days. For instance, this is the result for sunny days. For October 20, 2014, the 3DSS recommends to replace the 60-foot bus by a smaller 40-foot tripper at 11 a.m. Then the second recommendation is to remove this 40-foot bus at 3:30 p.m. And we computed the result of the fuel consumption, level of service, and the CO2 emissions. Then this is the test result for raining days. And for most of the raining days, it will suggest to adding a bus or replace the small bus by a larger tripper in order to bring more people from the road to the transit. So for the average result, we got the average 10.6 reduction of the fuel and the greenhouse gas emission, and at the same time, we maintained the service level less than 5, with average waiting time less than 5 minutes per passenger. So here we are working with the flexible transit to try to test this 3DSS system into multiple routes in reality, and try to investigate the network impact of the algorithm. That's all. Thank you.
Okay, the final speaker in this first session is Celeste Chavis, and she is with Morgan State University. So Celeste will come up and we'll get the presentations there. Good.
Thank you for having me here today. I am an assistant professor in the Department of Transportation at Morgan State University. When I was putting this presentation together, I was kind of debating between going in depth in one topic or giving you a sample of everything that I do. I decided to do the latter, so I'm going to try to do that in the 15 minutes allotted to me. So I tend to focus on urban transportation issues. I come from a civil engineering background, but I like to bring an equity lens into the work that I do. I've done work in traffic operations and public transportation mostly, but I really like to focus on like the vulnerable population set, whether it be elderly, school age transportation, et cetera. I've been fortunate to have some international experience as well as local experience when it comes to research, international primarily being in East Africa. I also have taken advantage of the fact that Morgan State is located in Baltimore City, so I have a great urban playground in the backyard. So I do a lot of work with the community as well. So I'll talk a little bit about what I've done at the international scale, what I've done through the UTC, and then lastly what I've done in the community. So most of my work has been in Nairobi, Kenya. I've also done work in Dar es Salaam, Tanzania. Most of this work has been along the realm of traffic operations. This picture here is one of the major roundabouts leading into the central business district in Nairobi. And as you can see, there's a lot of congestion. It's operated by cops. Those traffic signals are not on or working. And as we've seen a lot of urbanization, this congestion issue has just been growing exponentially there. So I have done some work looking at roundabout control strategies. They have put some government vehicles with sensor technology, looking at how we can use that data to see what's going on in the system real time, so there's no infrastructure in ground like we have here in the States. I have also done some work with the macroscopic fundamental diagram, and essentially it's similar to the traffic fundamental diagram that we have for roadways, but you scale it up to a network. And so you look at how do we get the optimal flow for a certain network. And in this case, the network that we were looking at was the Central Business District in Nairobi. If you notice, the entrances into the Central Business District are all controlled by roundabouts. And so that naturally poses some problems because once the roundabout is blocked, all the approaching directions cannot get through. So that's why you have police stationed there to at least prevent gridlock from occurring. But what you'll see often there is these roundabouts cause a lot of traffic issues, and you never know how long your commute will be home. It could be 1 hour, it could be 2.5 hours, and oftentimes the culprit will lie somewhere along the roundabout. So some things that I've looked at is just how do we control the roundabout, and controlling it when you're using police officers as opposed to how you control it with signals that adds a second letter of complexity because you need to be simple in the scheme that you use. I've also, in terms of the macroscopic fundamental diagram, this is kind of a relatively new concept. It had been mostly applied to Western cities, and the reason why it was unique to see if it could be applied to Nairobi is because their street network is pretty limited. And so with the limited street network, there's not a lot of redundancies in routes. So if you're going from one origin to one destination, you don't have a lot of choices in the route that you can take. And so what we wanted to see was, would this even exist in a city such as Nairobi, where there's not a lot of alternative routes? And so we did this via simulation, and we did indeed find that this relationship exists. And so what the fundamental diagram looks at is the flow or the amount of vehicles you have circulating in your network as opposed to the total accumulation or the total number of vehicles on your network. So that's a proxy for density. Since the lane mileage is fixed, if you count the number of vehicles circulating in the system, you get a proxy for density. And so we did see that this relationship exists, and the purpose of this project was to look at, okay, how do we improve things? So we looked at two different types of policies. One controlled where you are on this fundamental diagram. So ideally, you of course want to stay on the free flow side of things. So we looked at metering strategies to control the amount of traffic coming into the central business district so that you can maintain high flows. And then the second set of policies that we looked at actually changed the shape of the diagram. and it raises it. And so you look at things such as adding lane mileage and stuff to see how we can actually raise this fundamental diagram and be able to have more vehicles on our system. So that kind of sums up just a little bit of what I've done on the international scale. In terms of UTC, I currently am working on 2 projects, both with Virginia Tech. The one I'll talk about today was the one that, if anyone came by my poster, was related to on-street parking. Looking at if you provide information about on-street parking, how can that reduce congestion? I've also had a project using big data. I just wanted to kind of put that out there. This was using general transit feed specification data. And what we did was we tapped into, this was in Boston, we tapped into their API, collected a month of data for where their vehicles have been traversing in real time. And what we wanted to see was, were there any kind of equity issues related to how the transit was being provided? So you would expect that areas where there's, for example, low vehicle ownership and whatnot, we should have more transit service being provided because that's where the need is. And so what we did was looked at, if you look at the schedule and looked at the supply versus the demand versus looking at the actual vehicles and incorporating delay and looking at supply and demand and seeing if there was any differences in that. And what it turned out was, if you're looking at the expected or the scheduled service, they did supply more transit vehicles where there was a demand, but once you take into effect the delays across the city, that kind of went away. So it was kind of even across the different demand deciles. And so that's just some preliminary work. We have this huge, rich data set that we would love to do more with. So if anyone's interested in that, please see me afterwards. In terms of the current study that we're doing, we are doing it with the DC Department of Transportation. If anyone's familiar with the DC area, it's very difficult to park in certain areas. We're looking at the Chinatown area, which is where the Verizon Center is. If you're used to the metro, it's where the red line and the green line, where you have that big transfer hub. So it's a very busy part of town, and they have been doing a pilot study where they have embedded sensors in the ground at certain places, not 100% coverage, but they do have an algorithm where they can predict the level of occupancy for on-street parking. And so where we come in is how to best relay that information back to the public with the goal of reducing the amount of time people are circulating trying to find a parking spot. So we're just beginning this project. We're looking at different ways of presenting the information, whether it be through a mobile interface or directly on street through signage. We definitely wanted to look at the on-street side of things because this area of DC in particular has a high amount of tourists, and so they may not know about apps that are available to download. So we really wanted to look at ways of disseminating that information to the person who's not familiar with the area as well. So what we plan to do is test the different ways of presenting the information in our driving simulators. We have 2 simulators at Morgan State University, and we're getting our data directly from DDOT. They have some scenarios in mind that they would like us to look at, and we're going to look at ways of safely providing that information and seeing what people's driving behavior changes are based on how we present that information. And then also, this is being done with Virginia Tech, and they're going to look at some of the signage and ways of presenting the information actually on the real world ground using their field test facilities, driving an actual car, since we know that the simulated environment is a bit different than the real world environment. So where I really enjoy a lot of the work that I do has to deal with the community. So as I said before, we're located in the middle of Baltimore City. So I've been fortunate enough to be really involved in a lot of the work that's going on, and it's a very fascinating time for the city. We're currently getting a whole new bus system. We had a rail line be vetoed by our new governor. and all sorts of things like a new bike share coming in as well. So I have done work related to K-12 transportation, which is what I will talk about today to end my talk. And I've also have looked at some impacts of current events, such as these new bus systems, or even the recent riots that we had. Any idea why riots and transportation would go hand in hand? That's the educator in me. Well, that's how I'll end my talk, is why I think that the Freddie Gray riots were intricately linked to transportation. And so those are some of the things that, transportation engineers don't often think about, as some of the social implications of what we do. So Baltimore City, once you reach middle and high school, you are able to attend any school in the city. So you no longer attend your neighborhood school, and in addition, they take public transportation to school. There is no yellow bus service at the middle and high school level. So those two things coupled together makes for some really interesting transportation challenges for the city. So we have two really well-known high schools, City and Poly. They are kind of well beyond the other high schools of the region. And so what you'll see here, I'm sorry that you can't really see the school that well. Here is the location of Poly, and over here, the white dot is the location of City. So this is where the school is located. All the colored dots are where the students are coming from across the city. The colored dots relate to another study that I don't have time to go into detail, but that is the residential location. And what I have shown here is the 5 most frequently used routes for students who are attending that school. So those are what the lines are representing. So depending on where the school is located, it's a real challenge for the students to get to school. We've often seen students who travel 2+ hours on public transportation just to get to that high quality school. And one of the things is, so downtown Baltimore is located over here. As you see, these schools are kind of more out in the peripheral, and so they don't have very good transit access. So these two schools, students have to kind of test into. They have academic requirements to enter. The next set of schools I'll show you are what we call choice schools, where basically if there's a seat available for you, you can go to that school. And you notice that even though the schools that are kind of more far away from the downtown area, the students are located closer to where the school is located. So in that case, they do use transportation kind of as a one of the factors for deciding where you're going to school. But if you're able to get into the really good schools, you will suffer on our transportation system. And this other one is Patterson, which is in the far eastern part of the city. And so what I've been doing in terms of school-based transportation is looking at how that influences absenteeism. And so what we've done is created a Bayesian model to look at the link between transit accessibility and absenteeism. And what we found that was beyond the self-selection of being at an entrance requirement school or not being at an entrance requirement school, transportation was a key factor in predicting chronic absenteeism. In particular, if there was a direct route between home and school, if you come from a neighborhood where there's high vehicle ownership and whatnot. So back to the question about how did the riots why was transportation a part of the riots? Well, the riots occurred right after school let out. And so what happened was school let out and someone made a decision to stop running transit. We don't know who that decision is attributed to, but the decision was made to stop running transit. And so this happened right when school had let out, and so the students were kind of stuck at various transportation locations. And so this is a quote from a teacher who was at a school that was nearby where the riots occurred, said students were trapped in the mess, whether they decided to participate or not. They were thrown into the middle of a battlefield, and really they had no way of getting home because transit had stopped. And if you look at the ridership map for Baltimore, this is a heat map. You can kind of see the rail structure. We have a very radial system in Baltimore. So the more intense colors, like the red and the yellow, are our locations with the highest ridership. And if you notice, that occurs downtown, and then the other two locations are at two stations that we call Mondawmin and Penn North. And so for those who weren't familiar, basically the riots started at Mondawmin and then moved south towards Penn North. So that is where a lot of the students have to go through to get home. So there was an abundance of students who were literally stuck, met with a bunch of police, as you see in the bottom left corner. These are all police officers in riot gear, and that's what they were met with at the end of the school day, and they could not go home even if they wanted to. So that's some of the things that you wouldn't think about, but because students use public transportation, because public transportation was built around downtown-centric jobs, but yet our schools are dispersed across the city, that really puts some challenges on the system, and then sometimes that gets translated into social issues at different times. So with that, thank you. I kind of just say I'm an engineer with a social scientist hat on sometimes. I hope that it was a bit thought-provoking and you got some interesting ideas. And as they say in Kenya, asante sana, and I'll take questions later.
So we do have some time for questions. So, and we're in the fancy classroom. So if you want to ask a question, you can push this button on the little microphone in front of you, and that will pick it up. So let me turn it over to Nguyen. So Rajesh, the work you're doing on behavioral modeling, so much of the uncertainty with autonomous vehicles is not route choice. Just how are people going to so Celeste, the work you did with the riots, I thought was really interesting. What can we learn from that with other event, terrorist events, where you have so you could essentially be without transportation, away from an event. That's what you really want them away from, is not to be in the middle of it. speakers for the great session. Okay, we'll take a break now, and we will start again at 4 o'clock. So we'll start at 4 o'clock sharp. Enjoy. And as a reminder, if you would like to join a group for dinner tonight at one of the local restaurants near the hotel, please sign up in the lobby during the break. Thanks. So we're going to go ahead and kick off the second session here, and I will start by introducing Julie Maresca, and Julie is at the University of Delaware, so it's all yours, Julie.
I advance the slides. Page up and page down over here. Okay, so when I started thinking about living organisms in and on concrete, because I'm a microbiologist and that's what I do, I thought, well, is that better? Okay, sorry about that. This is very complicated, standing here in between the keyboard and the mic. Okay. So when I started thinking about living organisms in and on concrete, I thought, what kind of environment are they experiencing in there, right? What's special about the concrete that makes it different from soil, for example? And the first and the biggest thing is that the pH of concrete is really high. It's about 12.5 when it's freshly poured. All the concrete people in here can correct me when I say wrong things. And this is a pH that we just don't see in nature very often. It's really high in silicates, calcium, magnesium, so it's very salty. And it's very dry. Now, this is one of those words that makes concrete people a little bit like, because there's a lot of water in concrete, right, when you mix it up. But that water is really all associated with minerals. It's not wet in there. And these organisms have to withstand some really big fluctuations, right? We think about the range of temperatures in which humans are comfortable is fairly narrow. But these bacteria are undergoing daily fluctuations of temperatures that can be as high as 30 to 40 degrees, right? The difference between 6 a.m. and 6 p.m. is very big. They withstand really big fluctuations in wetting, right, when it rains, in salt content. So we salt roads like crazy in the winter, right? And so they have to be tough not just for conditions that are there all the time, right, like the pH, but also for things that change rapidly on short time scales. So anything that's living in concrete has to be really tough to survive in there. So, okay, I thought, well then, that's just too hard. There's nothing that lives there. Then I went for a run. And as I was running, okay, I take it back. I went for a run, and then later I said, okay, I can take pictures to illustrate this principle. So I went for a run with my camera, and I said, okay, I see some organisms on concrete, right? We've all seen these things. And you know, leaves and trees don't really live on concrete, but they're close by, right? The concrete chemistry is going to be affecting the soil around them. And if you take a closer look, page down, you'll see things like this, right? Moss right in those little concrete cracks. So it's living in very close proximity. But what I really wanted to see before I started a project on bacteria in and on concrete was some evidence that something is living directly on concrete and not dying. So I finally found this when I went into an alley just off Main Street in Newark, right underneath this downspout. You see this little mat of green things right here. And I've seen some pictures on other posters today of really thick, really beautiful green microbial mats on things like bridge pilings, right? So that told me there are things that can handle this. Let's start looking. And the way that so it really raises two questions, right? Do the microbes in or on concrete change as that concrete changes, right? Because the chemistry of concrete will change as it ages. And then if they do, can we use them to tell us something about that concrete structure? Okay, so the goals of this project were really threefold, right? First, to identify microbes that are associated with normal concrete or concrete that's aging and weathering normally, and in damaged concrete. And for our example damage, we used alkali silica reaction damaged concrete because this is a series of changes that are really well defined chemically. We know what happens to concrete as the ASR happens. And then to develop a non-invasive or minimally invasive test for those particular microorganisms. So we can say, if this thing is present, you're in the early stages of ASR, for example. And third, and this is a little bit more basic, to understand how microbes survive in concrete and whether or not they contribute to degradation. We're not at that point yet, but that's one of our long-term goals. Okay, so we analyze microbes in concrete in two ways. I'm only going to talk about one of them today. So the first way is cultivation dependent, right? Can we grow them in the lab? And I'll just say briefly, yes, we can. I had an undergrad from the civil group, actually, isolate 15 different kinds of bacteria from concrete which told me that there are bacteria in concrete and they're not dead. This was really promising. So he did that, and it's been pretty successful. And the second way is to analyze the DNA in concrete. So pull the DNA out and analyze that directly and not try to grow it in the lab. And that's what I'm going to be talking about today, because it's more comprehensive. Okay, so the proof of principle experiment that we did, and this work was just accepted for publication in Materials and Structures, so hopefully you will be seeing it soon, was getting DNA out of concrete. And we used for this just a test cylinder that we had poured from normal Home Depot concrete and then put out on the roof for about a year. I'm going to tell you that this one little arrow, getting from concrete that we chipped out of the cylinder to DNA that was extracted that you can see here, was about 18 months of work and a lot of crying. Not mine, well, a little bit mine. And we have to treat that concrete. I had thought, people get DNA out of rocks all the time. We'll just do that, and it will be easy. It turns out that you have to treat concrete like bone. The mineral content of concrete is more like that of bone. And those minerals interfere with the DNA extraction, and so you have to get rid of things like calcium and silica before you can do the DNA extraction. Once we figured that out, it wasn't easy, but it was very straightforward. So what you see here is genomic DNA, and we reliably now get DNA out of concrete, any sample that we have. It's a very low biomass system, so we get between 0.2 and 20 nanograms of DNA per gram of concrete. In comparison to something like soil, which you would get at least a microgram of DNA per gram of soil, so it's 1,000 times less. It's very little, but there's stuff in there, and we can analyze it. Microbes have a gene. They all have a gene called the 16S gene that we use for classification, right? So what we did was make copies of that gene, send them off for sequencing, and have all of those genes sequenced so that we could say what kinds of microbes are in concrete. Is this all making sense so far? Yes, no? Okay. So for our proof of principle experiments, we just compared what's on the top surface of a concrete cylinder that was outside to what's inside. We really want to know what's inside that concrete, because that's really going to be what reflects the chemistry of what's going on inside, right, and not the weather. What you can see, you can't read any of this, and that's totally fine, don't worry about it. What you can see is that there are a few major differences between the top and the side. As you would expect, each one of these wedges represents one species of bacteria. There are more species on the top surface than there are inside. And you would expect this, right? There's more deposition from the atmosphere, there's rain, there's bird poop. All of these things are contributing to the kinds of microbes that you would find in these samples. Right? So we expect the top to have more kinds of bacteria than the inside, and that's exactly what we see. The other thing that's really interesting, you see that a lot of these wedges are yellow, and those yellow bacteria are actinobacteria. These are bacteria that have very tough membranes. So they're really well adapted to harsh environments like the concrete environment. They can withstand a lot of pressure, they can withstand these really high salt concentrations, and they survive pretty well. They're also capable of they're not exactly spores, but they're sort of dormant cell types. So they can kind of hunker down and wait for things to get better. So they might not be very active all the time. So this tells us, one, that there are bacteria in concrete, two, that there's a lot of kinds of bacteria in concrete, and three, that we can analyze them using DNA analysis. So this is really good. It's about as much as I have to. Oh, wait. The other thing that I was concerned about is that with this kind of sequence analysis, especially if you want to identify things that you could use as bioindicators, you want to make sure that you're seeing everything that there is to see in that sample. And in high diversity environments, in environments where there's a lot of different kinds of organisms, you might not be able to sample everything. So what we did was a rarefaction analysis, where we looked at our whole data set, and then we subsampled from that data set. If we take just 1,000 sequences out of this data set, how many bacterial species would we see? And we would see, if you subsampled 1,000, you would see just a couple hundred sequences. As you increase the size of your subsample, how much more information do you get out of that? And what you hope to see is these two curves kind of leveling off. So more data doesn't actually correlate to more information. And what we see is that leveling off. So the level of sequencing that we're doing right now is really sampling all of the diversity that's in there. So we're doing a pretty good job at catching everything that's in there. This is also helpful. Okay, So I told you that I wanted to do structural health monitoring, to use these things as bioindicators. But to do that, you really have to set up a controlled environment where you're comparing two things that are similar to each other. So what we did in 2013 was get materials from the Delaware Department of Transportation. And I told David Dodd there, I just want something that's going to crumble from ASR as fast as possible. He said, are you sure? I said, yes. Okay. So he gave me some really reactive materials to work with. And so we made two sets of test cylinders, one of which is really susceptible to the alkali silica reaction. And the other half uses Delaware's normal mitigation protocol. So they replace about half of the cement powder with fly ash. We just took all of those cylinders and put them out on the roof for 3 years. And every 6 weeks, starting in 2013, we brought in one pair of cylinders, so one from each of those sets, and archived it, so that we can compare the DNA in those samples over 3 years in damaged and undamaged concrete, so that we can look for trends. So that is actually where we are now. My postdoc has just heroically extracted DNA from 3 years worth of archived cylinders in triplicate. And so I don't have any new sequence data to show you. But what I can tell you is that we may see some seasonal patterns. I was talking with, who was I talking with about this earlier? You. That it does seem, the amount of DNA we get does seem to increase in the late summer. And that's when we see these huge rainstorms, right? Every so often in July, and I'm sure you have them here too, right? In July and August, you have these like 1.5 inch rainstorms that deliver a ton of water into your systems. And what that water brings with it is organic carbon and other nutrients. And so it wakes up, it may be, I'm just hypothesizing, waving my hand, so don't tell anybody that I said this. Right? It may be that these huge increases in DNA here are because the water and the nutrients that came in with it woke up the microbes there, made them a little more active, and they divided rapidly for a short time. But since we see it over several samples in July and August, I think this is not an artifact. Right? It's still a very low biomass system, but we may see some seasonal changes, and we are looking at what's in the components that went into that concrete. So one of the questions I get a lot when I give this talk is, where do those bacteria come from? And where's anything come from? The things on the surface, I would say, many of them are coming in from rain or atmospheric deposition. But the ones inside are probably coming in with the materials. They're probably on the aggregate or on the cement powder, right, when you mix it. Nobody sterilizes that stuff when they mix their concrete. And so we've extracted DNA from all of those components that we use to make our test cylinders to compare those populations and see how they correlate. Okay, so that's where we're at right now. These are my conclusions. I have one more slide after this, and then I'll be done. Am I good on time? Which is that the DNA-based analysis of bacteria in concrete is feasible. And what that means is that we can apply this to any other system, right? We're using ASR as a test system now because it was pretty straightforward, but people who are interested in other types of damage or other types of concrete, pervious concrete, could also use this. And so if you're interested in collaborating, I would be happy to do that. Please come talk to me. Let's see, what else can we say? Bacteria in concrete and on the surface are generally comparable. So those populations are similar. They're not the same as you would expect, but they're similar. And this community is actually very similar in composition to what you find on things like rock surfaces. So there's been a lot of work done on bacteria that live on monuments, stone monuments, and we see a lot of similarities to those. Okay, so what's next? We're going to sequence the samples from the time series. We now have all that DNA, and we're just going to send it all off and get a ton of data back in about a month, I hope. And then look for trends that are related to the treatment, to the age, to the season, to anything else that we can identify. And what's going to be really important, if we want to turn this into a functional applied system, is comparing the predictions that we make in the lab to field samples. And so one of the reasons I was really glad to give a talk today so that I can tell everybody, send me concrete. I really think that comparing what we get in the lab to what's in the field is going to be critical. So if you have, send me a little bit of it, just a little bit. I don't want any dump trucks, but 10 grams should do it, and I would be really grateful. So there's my address, and I brought a huge pile of cards to pass out to you. So with that, I think I'll stop, and just thank all the people who helped. Thomas Schumacher is the civil engineer who talked me into starting this project. Paul Moser is the former student of mine who now works at DelDOT, who got the initial bacteria isolated. And then I had a lot of people at UD who supported this project in different ways. And I, of course, have to thank you all and the University of Delaware Research Foundation for giving me money to do it. Thanks a lot.
Thank you very much. Okay, our next speaker will be Nguyen. Hai is at Marshall University, so let's welcome Hai.
Thank you, Brian, for the introduction, and good afternoon, everyone. So it's my great honor to be here today in the UVA to talk about our research on the FRP composites for infrastructure application. And I am Hai Nguyen, a research engineer at Marshall University. Here's the outline of my presentation. So first, I will give some introduction about the FRP composites and their application. And then, I will talk about our research endeavor in developing the FRP beam for bridge application. And finally, the concluding remark. So the FRP, or fiber reinforced polymer, also known as fiber reinforced plastic, is a composite material composed of polymeric matrix reinforced with a fiber. So the main function of the fiber is to carry the load, to provide the stiffness, strength, and other property in the composite. The important function of the polymeric matrix is to bind the fiber together, and also transfer the load to the fiber. And we also can add the filler and additive to the composite to provide a good surface finish and also to protect fiber from the chemical attack. So what's the advantages of the FRP composite? So it has very high strength and the stiffness, high corrosion resistance, and especially it's very lightweight material. However, it's a brittle material and it has a high initial cost, especially, for the carbon fiber. And also there are still lacks of standard specification and code for the designing of FRP related structure. So the FRP has been used since the 1940. And it has been applied in different sectors, such as aerospace, automobile, marines, sport goods, etc. And in the field of the structural engineering, so the FRP has been used for internal and external strengthening of reinforced concrete and pre-stressed concrete structure. And for hybrid structure in combination with the traditional material like the concrete and steel, and for the fully composite structure. And in the US, the internal FRP reinforcement has been developed since the 1960s. And the low-cost GFRP fiber usually used for the non-pre-stressed application, while the high-strength carbon aramid fiber are the preferred for the pre-stressed structure. It can be used for the cable or for the pre-stressed tendon. And you see these are photos. So the Buffalo Creek Bridge in West Virginia, which Donnie maybe know very well. And this is known as the first vehicular bridge in the US to use the FRP reinforcement in the concrete deck. In this case, so the FRP bar were used. So different type of FRP reinforcement, including the GFRP grids, also used very popular for the concrete deck. It seems to be stuck. Oh, sorry, it's leave it, yeah. Okay, the external bonded FRP reinforcement has been successfully applied for the fracture and the shear strengthening of reinforced concrete and pre-stressed concrete structure. And you can see this photo, the fracture strengthening of the reinforced concrete girder using the CFRP laminate. And the right-hand side figure, you show the strengthening of the concrete column using the FRP rock. So the typical type of the FRP, including the FRP strip, FRP fabric, and FRP sheet, usually used for external application. So other type of the FRP composites, it can be combined with the traditional material like the concrete and steel to form the hybrid structure. So there are three major types. So the FRP deck topped with the steel girder, which are very popular. And so here in a bridge in Virginia, using the GFRP deck supported by the steel girder. And other type, the concrete deck, supported by the FRP girder. It's a topic of my study that I will talk maybe in the few next slide. And recently they investigate for the concrete field, the FRP tube. And there are many bridges made entirely of the FRP in US, in UK, in Europe, in Japan. And you know, the first FRP bridge, footbridge, were complete in Scotland in 1992. You know, this bridge, the bridge deck and the tower also made of GFRP. While the cable, the cable stay bridge with the two plan was made of aramid caliber FRP. So we have completed the following main study, which the first development of hybrid FRP, or I call it HFRP, I-beam for bridge application. So why the hybrid FRP? Because in our study, we use a combination of the carbon fiber and glass fiber in the flanks of the I-shaped girder. And the second study, we developed the high HFRP, ultra high performance fiber reinforced concrete beam system for bridge application. And next one, development of test fixture for obtaining material property of the thick FRP composite. You know, the ASTM standard can be applied for only thin FRP composite. And finally, the development of the innovative splice plates for double lap bonded and bolted joint for FRP beam. Because of the time limitation, so I will focus on the first two studies. So we have developed an I-shaped FRP girder. For some reason it's not so here, but here we use a carbon fiber in the flanges where larger stress are concentrated. Why we use a glass fiber in both the flanges and the web to reduce the construction cost. And here the actual view of the FRP beam cross section, and we use a protrusion process to manufacture this beam. And here's the dimension of the I-shaped beam. We use a different type fiber including the carbon FRP unidirectional and GFRP bidirectional, both 0, 90 or plus minus 45, or other type we use a glass fiber continuous strand mat. So in the FRP beam, we use multiple layer of the CFRP or GFRP. We call it the ply in the flanges and the web. And you can see here some GFRP were extended from the flank to the web laminate to provide the continuous fiber across the flank web junction, which result in the strength improvement for the FRP beam. And we have conducted, I believe, more than 20 large-scale tests under the 4-point bending. And we found that the typical failure mode of FRP beam is a delamination of compression flank followed by the crushing of the web. And this figure, shows the relationship between load and midspan deflection for the beam with the 14%, 33%, and 52% of carbon fiber in the flanges. And as you can see, all the beam behave almost linearly up to the failure. And the beam with the 33% of carbon fiber shows the highest ultimate load, while the beam with the 14 and 52% of carbon fiber in the flanges show almost a similar ultimate load. So what happened? So it seems that the more carbon fiber we use in the flanges will lead to the high stress concentration at the fiber interface and leading to the delamination of the compression flank. I will skip this one because it's too technical and time consuming. Okay, so I would like to show you, a movie showing the failure mode of the FRP beam. This movie was recorded by the high-speed camera. Okay, so okay, it's not work. I'm sorry. Okay, going to next slide. So the developed FRP girder has been successfully applied to a demonstration pedestrian bridge in Hiroshima, Japan. So this bridge is located in the coastal area where the many structures are susceptible to the corrosion due to the chloride attack by the seawater, by the airborne sea salt. And this bridge is intended to replace for the deteriorated bridge. You see here. This type bridge which is very popular in the fishing ports in this area. And this beam is a simply support between the pontoon in one side and concrete deck on the other side. It includes a 2 HFRP beam topped with the GFRP grating. As you can see, GFRP grating. And after the bridge assembly is completed, so we have conducted the on-site test. The bridge are subject to bending under the both concentrated and uniform load. And you can see this picture shows the number of people standing at the middle of the bridge. And then, so the rest we measure and convert to the load. And then, so we measure for the deflection and the strain using the displacement transducer and the strain gauge attached to the HFRP beam. And then, so we use the built-in crane on the pontoon and another crane on the boat next to the pontoon for the erection of the bridge. And you can see here, on the pontoon side, it's roller support, and on the deck side is a pin support of this bridge. And you know, based on previous study, so it shows that the FRP beam should not be subjected to high stress of the compression flank. So the idea is to it's better to set the neutral axis of the FRP beam to the top by providing the concrete on top of the FRP beam. So in this study, we use ultra high performance fiber reinforced concrete, or I call it the USP FRC. So the USP FRC has a very high tensile strength and durability, so it allows for the reduction of cross-section. You know, the reduction of cross-section will result in the lighter structure, and the benefits of the lightweight structure will be the faster construction, will be the smaller foundation, saving for the cost and for the labor, and also some studies show that it can benefit on the CO2 emission to environment. Still have to. Okay. So so I agree. So based on result of our study of the FRP, USP, FRC, so we has been applied the result to the actual bridge in you know, the Miyagi in Japan. You know, the Miyagi is an area that has been hit by a massive earthquake in 2011. At that time I was there, but about 200 miles away from the epicenter, but I still feel the very strong shaking of the building. And this bridge, you know, is include, we use here segmental USB FRC, and connection between the segment. We use a two-tie, either epoxy or we use a high-strength mortar. And in this case, we use a 2 GFRP girder topped with the USB FRC segmental slab. Okay, here's some conclusion from this study. Although the design of the HFRP I-beam and the FRP, USB, FRC composite beam is governed by the beam stiffness and the deflection rather than their strength. The developed beam are promising for application for the short span, pedestrian, and vehicular bridge. And the second conclusion is the developed beam can also be used for enhanced durability and the structure, as the FRP composites and USB, FRC are the very durable material. And here I show some reference if you are interested in this research, so you can refer to our publication. Thank you. Thank you.
Our final speaker will be Cody Fleming. Cody is a faculty member here at the University of Virginia. And again, we will, after Cody's presentation, we will have some discussion and Q&A session. So, Cody, it is all yours.
So I forgot to put anything about Jefferson. I thought about this last night after I sent the slides to you, or the rotunda counts too, but I guess I get reciprocity from you doing it earlier. And I mentioned it, yeah. So I'm going to talk, everything that I talk about is going to have something to do with software, and which might seem like a weird thing to talk about to a bunch of transportation researchers, but hopefully I make it clear that this impacts most of you, especially people who are into traffic management. If I don't make that clear. So I'm actually an aerospace engineer by training, and so I'm going to give you like a 2-minute history of air traffic management, which is like a 75-year history before I get into stuff. But I'm also doing research in the automotive domain. My primary interests have been in automation and safety. And so let's get into it. So air traffic control, this is still what they do. They sit at these stations and look at all this stuff and make decisions manually. And they communicate those decisions to the pilots, who then have to execute those maneuvers. And they talk to each other via landline or whatever. That's actually still mostly how it's done today. So it's been done in a similar way for the past 70 years, like I said. The traffic itself is very decoupled. So you have all these different classes of airspace, as you can see. And so when you fly on your commercial aircraft, you're going through very specific classes of airspace. And then it's also decoupled geographically. So a center will be in control of a certain region, and then they'll, again, manually, through just talking, communication, hand off the aircraft as it transitions to another. We're going to aircraft trajectories that are going to be managed automatically. So instead of an air traffic controller telling you, if you're a pilot, you have to go up, go down, change headings, go to a specific waypoint, it's actually a computer, either on the ground or in the air, that's going to tell the aircraft automatically what to do. And so they'll basically be following these virtual tubes. This is called trajectory-based operations. So you can imagine the one on the red and the gray line might have a potential conflict. The computers will identify that conflict and then bend those trajectories in a certain way. Instead of telling the aircraft, you got to fly way off because we have this thing happening. I don't know if people saw the accident in Dubai yesterday. So you can imagine the computers reacting to that and just bending the trajectories in space and time instead of telling the aircraft, you got to fly to 4,000 feet and just hang out there and we're not sure what you're going to do, which is, by the way, what happened. So this is a future version of air traffic control, and a lot of the decision making is going to be decentralized. Instead of a controller in front of these screens acting like an oracle, telling everyone what to do, there'll be some sense of negotiation between the various agents in the system, and again, all done automatically. All the information shared, so satellite information, all the route information, stuff going on the ground, the terminal en route will be shared so that everyone can have it, which if you're into cybersecurity, this should scare you a little bit. It scares me. There's too many challenges to list, but I'm doing some work in this area. One is that the system was really decoupled before, which made the complexity easier to manage. It's becoming increasingly coupled. Obviously, there's going to have to be a lot more reliance on automation. We don't think in 4D, so I can build a 4-dimensional trajectory, and then you have to execute it. It's got to be done by automation. And then increased distribution of decision making. Again, it could be the aircraft themselves that negotiate with each other and decide what to do, instead of a controller telling. This is an interesting line of work. I have results. I'm not, by the way, I don't have any results in these slides. More open questions. Again, you could think of a million more challenges if you thought about these problems long. But these are sort of 3 that there's everyone wants, when they're thinking about safety, everyone wants to think about aviation. And there are a lot of analogies between aviation and ground transportation. I don't want to take those analogies too far. But there are some analogies. You can imagine, you know, in Nairobi, they apparently have police officers managing traffic manually, which is absolutely amazing and kind of crazy. But the analogy here is that you have a centralized controller that, in this case, a series of traffic lights. I don't know if this is I think this is Photoshop, but anyway, it's a system that basically tells everyone what to do, and Nairobi looked bad. I think I have an even worse picture. Well, this is actually a project we're working on. This simulation, which I think I can't play. Is that right? Okay, so there's a little movie embedded here that's a simulation of, you could imagine cars just going through the intersection, not queuing up because there's a red light, but just kind of going through, and the yellow cars will miss the white cars by just a little bit. And this is a real-time automated traffic management system that doesn't rely on lights. We're extending a little bit. But so you can imagine, again, the decision making is now distributed, because this car here will just say, I want to go over here to the left, and I think I can make it in 10.5625 seconds. It's got to be kind of precise. And then plan a trajectory, and then there's this negotiation that happens. In this simulation, it's actually somewhat centralized, but you can imagine some benefits of having everything decentralized, which is that the automobile manufacturers pay for it. So there are some of these analogies with air traffic management, the way it's going, and the way the traffic flow management works. Well, yeah, I will talk about this. As a safety person, you know, for a long time we really focused on reliability of the parts. So we don't want like the wing breaking off the aircraft, or all the time something broke. That's still an open problem, but really we're into this era of software, which started being implemented in aviation in the 80s and more in the 2000s for cars. The computational capability of an everyday car that you could go out and buy right now is more than what's on your so that's what's driving around. We're going from sort of operator assist technologies all the way to full autonomy. And how do we prove that these things are safe? It's different than the mechanical reliability problem. You're talking about software now. But the software does what it should, when it should. We're seeing issues with that. Everyone know about the Tesla accident. That's actually in this realm here, the operator assist. So really, when we're thinking about safety now, it's a software problem and a decision-making problem and a design problem, and not just a mechanical reliability problem. Different way. Here's an interesting thing. These are software-related recalls in the automobile industry. This looks like it could be a little bit exponential. I suspect that it is. This is the number of recalls. I think they lucked out this past year in that it didn't affect as many vehicles. But this could go way off the charts, which is going to be very annoying to all of you. But very good for me. So the point is, the software always ends up sort of at the sharp end of the process. So we come up with these cool things we could do, But then it requires software to do it, and then to make it safe requires even more layers of complexity. So that's why software is important to you, especially if you're into real-time transportation management. It's not just making sure the code is correct, but at a conceptual level, the operational concepts actually drive the type of software that you have to design and how complex it is, which is another line of thinking. Switching gears a little bit, this is just an interesting problem, I think. So on one hand, we have a smart car. This is like what Google's doing. We're going to just sense and perceive and predict the world and then act accordingly. So I call this a smart car. This is actually a snapshot of what the Google car sees. Meanwhile, Toyota and others, this is Mercedes, but Toyota has invested $30 million just in university research on actually the human automation collaboration question. So these are technologies that assist the person, but the person still might be in charge in certain situations. So I call this the trusted assistant. Vehicle-to-vehicle communication, of which people in the audience work on. So the cars talk to each other, and there's some sense of collaboration that way. There's the enthusiast. So you can imagine in the year 2050, Brian's still driving around his 2016 Porsche, and it doesn't have any of these features, right? The smart city. So we're not only communicating between cars, but we're communicating to the infrastructure. And all these are really awesome. I'm not promoting any one over any of the others. What's interesting is what happens if all these come to fruition. How do these systems interact with each other? One thing that's kind of interesting is we're investing a lot of money, both privately in the industry and in the government. You can imagine investing a ton of money in V2X, so developing an infrastructure to talk to cars, and then Google wins. Right? Waste all our money going down this path when really this is the best way to go. And there's all these other scenarios. I'm interested at a systems integration level is what types of behaviors actually arise when you have all these systems. And again, there are many questions. Takeaways for me are that software is everywhere, and that software is not, we are in a computer science building right now, but it's still relevant to anyone doing anything in real time, anything that's safety critical. It's everywhere. It's not necessarily that everyone has to learn how to write perfect code, but I think we need to understand that whenever we decide to do something with physical systems, it has impact on the software design itself. And that's kind of the space that I'm in. And decision-making and control itself is changing just dramatically. I gave two examples, going from the centralized sort of human perspective to decentralized, automated, and again, just thousands of research. I really like thinking about questions. Unfortunately, writing proposals is kind of a drag. So if I could manage to write 1,000 proposals. So these are the takeaways, and these are where I see my future, hopefully over the next 15, 20 years, maybe more, maybe less, unless I get fired about the Jefferson thing. So with that, I will leave it. Thank you for staying awake, and I guess I'll invite the other two speakers down, and thanks. So I'm supposed to migrate over here?
Hey, if anything we accomplished this afternoon is to show the diversity of what we're doing here at MATS UTC. We went from biochemistry to fiber reinforced polymers to software and air traffic control. So this is cool. So I'm going to shut up and open up for questions. getting back to the infrastructure side, we talked about bioindicators in terms of the health of our infrastructure. You talked about FRP. I'm just curious, are there other opportunities for us to do a better job of building resilient infrastructure that reduces our need to rebuild, and also, are there other bioindicators, other applications of bioindicators beyond the concrete that you could think of from the transportation?